went to the University of Louisville. You went to law school, graduated from law school. You made the bad choice of going into a certain fraternity, but we're not going to talk about that.
Don't hold it against me.
But you have been in politics basically since you got out of school. What got you involved in politics?
Man, I stumbled into it. And actually, in undergrad is when I first began to think about politics as an arena I should even be thinking about. I didn't know much about it. From the West End, our folks, we just trying to survive. We don't deal with politics because they don't deal with us, and it started for me when I was considering going to law school. I knew I wanted to seek out folks that had been in those spaces because, both my parents had dropped out of high school and, I didn't have that infrastructure around me to say, here's what you do if you want to do something different. And they gave me a lot of prayer, a lot of support, love, but they didn't know the road ahead. So I sought out mentors. And it opened my eyes to the political arena, and mainly through Senator Derwin L. In order for me to meet with him, I had to ride with him to Frankfurt because he was so busy. I wanted to talk about him in his practice. In order to do that, though, I had to go to the Capitol. And I walk in the Capitol like, what is this place? And I'm in college.
Right.
And it really just snowballed, like the light switch flipped on for me. And I just started digging around, learning more. Things I saw in the community that I was pissed off about, I started to connect them to policy. And then I'm like, wait a minute, okay, if this stuff ain't just happening, policies are shaping how these things happen, I need to be in there affecting those policies. I was preparing to, practice law and argue the law. But if the laws aren't just, am I really doing everything I can do? That was my personal, thought. And so I just started meddling, working my way into every level of government, just carrying coffee, taking notes, whatever I could do to get in the room so that I can understand what was happening. And it really just snowballed.
What's the difference between being a professional athlete and a college athlete?
I think the biggest thing is, as far as playing at every level that I've experienced, it's the speed that you're expected to compete at. At high school you're playing and you're out there and you think you're playing fast, but then when you go and you step on the court with a college team, everything's happening a lot faster. Your reaction time has to be faster. And the NBA is the same way. You go from playing in college where you've got 35, 40-second shot clock, to now you got 24 seconds, and you got to get down court and execute 2 or 3 plays and get a shot off, try to score. So you got to do everything a lot faster, and you have to your mind has to catch up with what you're doing. Physically, you're capable of doing it, but you have to start thinking and responding a lot quicker.
Right. Well, I hear a lot of professional athletes talk about the difference for them is that point in time when the game actually slowed down for them. When did it actually slow down for you?
It took me about halfway through, almost a year, I'd say, for it to really get to where I was comfortable when I was out there playing. It was still moments when I'd catch myself. There were times when I'd catch myself like looking like, that's Magic Johnson. I got his poster up in my dorm room, And I had to remind myself, oh yeah, you're supposed to be guarding, Vlade Divac over there.
Right.
And so, but after a year, I got the hang of it, and it slowed down, and I got comfortable. Your rookie year, you hit that wall about halfway through the season.
I was going to ask you that. When did you hit the wall?
It was about halfway through. It was a little past halfway. Once we got to about game 52, that's when I started thinking, is this season ever going to come to an end?
Obviously, you're the pastor. You are over a huge ministry. A lot of people come to you to ask a lot of different things. How do you manage to do all the things that you do and still make time for your family? Now, I understand that you just had a new child.
Yeah.
And this is your third. You're dad, pastor, teacher, but you're dad. How do you be dad with all this other stuff going on?
So this is what I would tell any follower of Jesus listening to this right now. And I would even challenge folks who aren't Christians, because I know that's part of your audience too. This is my mindset. I have 3 ministries. One of them is the ministry of being the lead pastor at Northeast Christian Church, my job. But I also tell everybody I got a ministry as Lindsay's husband, and I raised my hand and volunteered for that one. And I got a ministry as Palmer, Larkin, and Olson's father. And all three of those ministries are important. They're all things that God has called me to. They're all things that I love deeply. They're all ways that I can make a difference in the world for Jesus. And so I hold all of those at a high importance. And so what I do is I pray daily for wisdom on how to make sure that I am balancing those and investing in those. You know, so there are times when, like right now, when I cut my work schedule back 50% during the middle of a pandemic, when we're probably going to be opening up church again soon for the first time. I shouldn't be away from work, but I cut my work schedule in half because I just had a third kid. And I knew my wife needed me at home and my kids need me at home. But then there are times where I tell my kids, hey, you're not going to see dad for the next day or two because God's got me out here doing this and serving our community in this way. By the way, that's one thing that I always want my kids to know. I want them to know that I'm not leaving the house and spending all this time at work in order to just make a buck. I think a lot of parents say that, hey, I got to pay the bills, and so that's why I'm going to work. I don't want them to ever connect me leaving them with money because I don't want them to see dad leaves me for money. I want them to see dad has to leave the house for mission.
A lot of people know who you are, what you stand for. Is there something that actually was put into you that kind of shaped who you are or the perspectives and the values that you have now?
You know, that kind of comes back to the Naval Academy experience, actually. You know, you have to understand, even though I grew up poor, I grew up in a black world, right? And we're right around the same age. You're a couple of years younger than me. But I have no memory of being in a space where there was not a black mayor. You know, Maynard Jackson was elected the first black mayor of Atlanta in 1973. You know, I was 6 years old. So I don't have any memory of politics in the city before that. And I went to black schools. I went to school with one white kid. He was at my elementary school for like a quarter, maybe, when I was in 5th grade or so. But outside of that, I went to school with all black kids. Majority black teachers, in fact. You know, I had like 2 white teachers all the way up until I got to high school. So I didn't, even though I was impoverished, I didn't grow up with this inferiority complex necessarily. And I didn't grow up in a world where I had to consider race because it was all black. You know, that's just what it was. I consider race, it wasn't the environment of my mother or my grandmother, it wasn't that experience. But when I got to high school, I was bused to Buckhead in Atlanta, which is one of the richest areas in the country and one of the best high schools, certainly in the city, probably in the South. And it was predominantly white. Started to experience race a little bit there, but still didn't understand structural racism. It wasn't until I made it to college, when I was at the Naval Academy, that I started to see disparate treatment and stuff that I couldn't really process, I couldn't really understand. You know, white midshipmen might do something, get one punishment, have one approach. A black midshipman do something else, you know, something else will happen to them. People getting excited while either my plebe year, it might have been my plebe year, I think there was the first black brigade commander happened. I'm like, why are these people so excited that there's a black dude who's the top midshipman now? It was the first, so that was a trip to me. Like, it's the first in the mid to late 1980s. Something's wrong with that, you know.
Will the genie ever go back in the bottle?
Yeah.
Will things ever get back to the way we used to be? I guess that's the question I want to ask you. Do you think things will ever get back to normal, or is this going to be the new normal for an extended period of time?
I do think, you know, all around the country and here in Kentucky, I think things will get back to normal. I don't think we're ever going to go to completely remote court. But I do think that certain components of it will be more readily done remotely now that we've been through this and we've had to do it. You know, in the business court, sometimes we have cases involving corporations that are around the country, and they may want to have a client representative present at some stage of the proceeding, whereas before they would fly in, you know, get a room, come and be in the courtroom. I would be open to having the conference line that I use now or the Skype line and allowing people to avoid that time and expense of travel and go ahead and, you know, appear remotely. So I think and our motion dockets. For non-lawyers, we all have a docket every week that's kind of a lightning fast call of setting things on cases.
Supposed to be
and doing
lightning fast.
I think that's pretty much okay done remotely because we're not hearing the real important stuff on those cases. We're setting dates and things. So I think we've learned a little bit about maybe some of what we do. We can take a little time and expense out for people. I think most of what we do, though, I mean, most of the things you hear involving our families and most of the things I hear involving people's liberty interests and victims whose families have been hurt, or even the civil cases, they are the most important things sometimes that's happened in that person's business life when they get to a point where they can't resolve it and they need a court system involved. And just most of those things I don't see doing remotely.
Right.
So that's why I say I think we'll get back to something that approximates the normal that we knew before the COVID virus. But I think hopefully the good side will be those things that are good we'll be able to carry forward. But I would rather, see and hear people and be able to dialogue with people and let them know I'm listening and really hear from them and
Right.
vice versa. I think it's more effective.
Right. So what was it like being a professional athlete?
Well, it was honestly scary because even when I got drafted to Houston, I knew my knee wasn't in the best condition. As far as going to Houston, they take care of you. You don't have to worry about money. Your house is paid for. I was in a condo paid for, car taken care of. I didn't have to have anything or bring anything. But the thing about going to Houston, whenever you get drafted, NBA, WNBA, you are an investment for that team.
Right.
Okay. Prior to going to being drafted, I had already had 4 knee surgeries, ACL reconstruction, and three arthroscopic surgeries. And so I remember getting a call, Sheree, we need you to come to the hospital. We need you to get an MRI of your knee. We want you to talk to the doctors, make
Was
sure.
this before or after the draft?
This is after the draft.
Okay.
I'm living in Houston, Texas. So I go get the MRI, get the results back a couple of days later, and the doctor calls me back into the office. We see something going on with your knee. They called it hydrochondritis, which basically meant that at that time that the cartilage on my knee was constantly chipping off. So not even a month, a couple of weeks after being drafted to Houston, I was told by the doctor that I probably have maybe 5 years playing professionally, and then I'm gonna have to have a full knee replacement because of how my knee looked. So after that, of course, once the coaches at Houston found out about how bad my knee was, they're like, no, she's an investment. We gotta let her go.
Tell me about when you first opened up that restaurant.
The first one was the worst one because I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed because we started off in pop-ups. And I came from a very high-end culinary experience as far as career go, and all my friends did too. So therefore, I was in the back of a gyro store doing our super chef's breakfast while they were closed. And I was so embarrassed that I would never tell nobody I owned the restaurant. If people who came in, they didn't know it was me because I didn't want that humiliation. Like, my friends is at all these nice hotels and restaurants being chefs, and then I'm in the back of a gyro place making breakfast. And I'm like, how did I get this pull in life? But I had started to not think like that. I started to be like, you know what? I'm gonna work with the best I have. And then if you could do the best of what you got, you're gonna get more later on.
Right. Okay, so people are starting to know who you are.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to know, how'd you get the name Super Chef?
Super Chef?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was given to me. So people always think I named myself Super Chef. I called myself Super Chef, but it was in the kitchen. I was out there. It used to be a restaurant called Maker's Mark on 4th Street. Now I think it's Bourbon Raw, maybe. And there was a chef I was just a line cook at the time. There was a chef who was, he was so proud of himself. And he got on the line next to me, and I just buried him. You know what I'm saying? I've always been really good at cooking. So he just couldn't keep up with me, man. Like, I was just selling out all my tickets. He's still, like, trying to get through 5 of them. And he was like, oh, you the super chef now? Look at you. You think now you the super chef. I was like, man, whatever. I ain't worried about it. Then I got to the Olympics, and we getting tattoos done. Everyone gets culinary. When they do these Olympics, they all get culinary tattoos from where they're at. Like, to represent where they've been at.
Right.
And I was like, what am I going to get? I was like, I don't know what to get on myself. And it was at night, we was in the kitchen, and one of the chefs was like, man, you real cocky. He's like, you think you some type of super chef or something, don't you? I was like, there it is. That's the last time somebody gonna call me that. Without me turning it around and using it for my own benefit. So that was it. Like, it was 2 times that someone had actually said it and called me it. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna run with it. It ain't like there's no chef with a name. Every chef's name is their actual name.
Right.
So it's always been weird. Well, it was for a long time, because like, why do you call yourself super chef? Like, why don't you call yourself Darnell Ferguson? I was like, this is the nickname I picked up. You know what I'm saying? But it's so cultural for us because we grew up with nicknames.
Right.
So it just fits into like how I was raised. But that's how I came aboard. But my barber, he kind of gave me a whole different, man, it's so funny with the name Super Chef. But that's how I got the name.
Well, tell me about the transition, because as we stated, you're the president today, but you didn't come in as president.
No.
Tell me about the transition from TV to being the marketing director.
Nor was I qualified to come in as the president. There are some common skills that will make you have a degree of success in whatever job you're in. You know, there are communication skills, collaboration, crisis management, creativity. I think there are 6 C's. There's 4 of them anyway. But those things will translate. It was my job to tell a new future employer how I could help them, and I had to prove it to them. They didn't have anything to prove to me. So I became fascinated with this, and I learned we're at a museum. We still tell stories, right? We tell stories that last even longer. We tell them through exhibits. We tell them through performances. But there was a whole business side that I had to learn. And first, I did the marketing thing exclusively for 3 years, and I was kind of, I think, Penny's. I was her counsel. She would asked me for advice on things, and was involved in the Fraser getting the designation as the official starting point of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and a lot of those relationship things that have led to our success. So I got to learn from her on the job, and about a year and a half ago, she promoted me to vice president, and then had to take a dive into the finances. And, we run 5 different businesses here, right? We're a museum store, we're a parking lot, we're a facility rental facility. We do a lot of different things that are really crucial to the business working, and we have to have multiple revenue streams coming in to make it work, because this is a 100,000 square foot facility with an LG&E bill that can get to $20,000 a month. That's a lot of admissions if you're just counting on them to pay the bills. So,
right.
So there was an awful lot to learn, and I'm still learning every day. But it is a relationship business, and we need partnerships. We're a nonprofit, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. I love people. I get energy from people. I get energy from collaborating with folks on solving problems and coming up with creative solutions. So that's natural to me.
What went into your choices in going to college?
Well, playing football, I guess there wasn't a lot of choice to it. And then I remember growing up, I had a birthmark on my hand that was in the shape of a football. And then over time, it kind of faded away. But my dad was a football coach, played football, was always around it. Now, when I was a young kid, I never played Pop Warner. Typically, hear people talking about, you're playing sports. You go, play Pop Warner football when you're turned 7 or something like that. I never did that. Just because at that time it was like, it just didn't interest me. And the other part about it too was you wanted to be to give yourself mentally and physically an opportunity to kind of get to the right place to where you can play a game like football, right, and understand the collisions and the things that are happening. So I didn't play football or organized football until I was in the 6th grade. but leading up to that, I always played baseball, and I always played some basketball, or I played soccer. So I was always on the soccer field and playing year round, and those experiences were helpful to me as well, because honestly, soccer was the place where I used to hate losing. And it would be so bad to where I would have to take Pepto-Bismol before games, because I would get so torn up, because in my head I'm running through all those different scenarios, and I just hated to lose, and I would work myself up. But then it was a year I had a soccer team that we were terrible, and we lost every single game. And it was one of those things where that's where I learned how to lose, not to enjoy losing,
Not
but
to
learning
accept
how
it.
to accept it, and then to move on, and not let it all consume you, so that the fire doesn't go away, to where you want to win and you want to give your best effort, but at the same time it doesn't devastate you, to the point that where you can't function and you can't move on. So again, like I said, all of those experiences is kind of what helped to shape me into the person I am today, flaws and all.
We're living in, people say, unprecedented times. Things are a little bit different. This is a new normal. How are you personally feeling about how things are today in the world? And we'll talk about the world, and then we'll talk about Louisville, how Louisville is feeling you.
So I think that Louisville is just a microcosm of what's happening in the world. I think the world is not a just place. Black people do not have access to justice in the way that other people do in this country, and it is showing. I think COVID-19 exposes a lot of breakdowns in our systems. That's why you see Black people being impacted more, dying more, getting sicker, because of the underlying conditions, not just physically underlying conditions, but also the communities we live in, also being overrepresented in those essential service jobs. So if you think about who's actually in a position to work from home, who's in a position to help their children school from home and all those kinds of things, I think in every way, justice has really been elusive to us. And you would know, certainly in the criminal justice system, quite frankly, even in the family court system, whose kids are taken away, who gets the support, who gets, the things that are needed. All of those things are complicated for people who look like us. And a lot of it has to do with what is broken around root cause and the lack of investment. You know what I'm saying? I can't say to you, Judge, don't remove this kid who's been abused because there's some root cause issues. I mean, you've got to do what you've got to do to be able to protect that child. But we also need a system that addresses the root cause challenges so that there are other things, other outlets for that family, other supports for that family. We have families now living in these communities that have been redlined out of opportunity, couldn't get bank loans, couldn't get a loan, couldn't refinance the house, can't find a job, so many things. And it's just one more thing, just the piling on that I think emotionally really do take their toll on us, which then make justice even more elusive, but also make us look always like the perpetrator, when we know, in fact, it is really the system that is the greatest perpetrator of them all, and we are simply responding to that for the most part.
I know that mental health issues have no characteristics, if you will. It can be from anywhere, but is there a group that you see more than others that utilize the services of the organizations?
Well, that's exactly why that this, if I'm answering the question right, that this is focused on the south and west end of Louisville. We're trying to first respond to lots of people have trauma, and it's different for different people in different areas. I went through lots of trauma, right? And the resilience that I had within me to get through that. But we know that there is violence and violence in the home. Kids see shootings, families see shootings. There's more of a disparity in income and education in these areas. And how do you impact all that at one company at a time, or one group at a time, or say that's the city's job or the police job? It's all of our job to understand trauma and to approach people in that way when we're responding to something that's happened to them or something that they've done.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier about being off for a couple of weeks. We took a couple of weeks off because of the issues that have faced the city.
Right.
What has been the position or the, well, for lack of better words, what has been the position of the organizations as far as the social justice movement is concerned?
Right. For 7 counties in
Yes.
Brooklyn?
Yes.
Yeah, we reacted to that pretty quickly. We looked
And
at
I know you did. I want other people to hear about this,
We
so.
did, and not that we felt like we were already responding to that and doing a really good job, but not. So we went around and talked to all our staff. We did live chats just like this with small groups across our company and asked the hard questions. What's working for you and what's not? Our black and brown colleagues, how are you feeling? How are we really doing as a team and as a management team responding to you? And as I look at my management team and I look at our board, it's pretty pale. So I wanted to hear back directly from our colleagues, our black and brown colleagues. How are we doing? And we heard some pretty tough things of how maybe they didn't feel safe coming in and talking about what just a drive to work was like for them sometimes. Coming into the East End and coming from the West End into the East End, how they felt treated, or maybe just the fear that they had getting into their own cars and driving to work and afraid that they were going to be pulled over. I had never heard things like this. And I feel really good about talking with my colleagues about my own life and what's going on in my life. And I want every colleague of mine, every person at 7 counties in Brookline and Bellwood to be able to come in and say, whoa, I had a bad day today, or this is what happened in my neighborhood, or this is what happened right down the street, and feel supported by that.
I've known of you for a long time, though. In the conversations that we've had, you constantly talk about your faith and your family. Football is what you did, but it's not who you are. Talk about your faith. Talk about your family, because it seems to be, to me, it seems to be more of who you are. So talk about that a little bit, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're playing, like when football was taken from me, I always would say, football does not define me. Mm-hmm. And then when it's taken away from you, you find out how much it truly did. Mm-hmm. And I was guilty of that. And I did pour into a men's group, and my church here in Louisville, Southeast, poured into people, but it was still a big part of me. So I don't want to pretend like it wasn't.
Believe me, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my faith is my foundation, and we're both on the U of L FCA board. I got introduced to a relationship with Christ in college by Chris Morgan, who runs U of L FCA. I grew up Catholic. My parents took me to church as a kid, but I didn't truly have a relation. I never understood the relationship aspect of it. I knew the rules aspect of it.
Right.
And you get to a point in life where if it's only rules and no relationship, it's like parenting. You break away if there's no relationship, and there was no relationship there. And then when I started digging into the Word, when I started feeling the peace that came from having a relationship with Jesus Christ, that changed my life. I remember giving a testimony in Buffalo at a couples Bible study, and I was prepping for it, and I was telling my wife, I said, I wish I had this big aha moment. Mm-hmm. Like this one day, God spoke to me, and I went and got baptized, and it was
your Damascus experience.
Yes, exactly. I'd never had Paul on the road to Damascus experience. Mm-hmm. Just over time, I developed a relationship, and I saw the fruit of it in my life. And my wife was like, that's powerful. Mm-hmm. It is what a lot of people can relate to that. Not as many people can relate to the big moment per se.
Right.
And I had big injuries. I broke my leg in half in Jacksonville. I wish at that moment I said, God, I give it all to you. Mm-hmm. And maybe if I hadn't already, my career ending would have been that humbling moment where I would have had to. But I had already done it, thank God, and I had a lot of peace that came with it. But, I start my day in the Word every single day. And I wish I could say I give them 10% of my day to start the day, but I at least give 10 minutes to start the day. And I know that's going to set me up for success throughout the day. At least I heard a talk by a Navy SEAL one time that said if he makes his bed in the morning, he at least knows accomplished something.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like me if I knock out a little bit of the Word, knock out my morning devotional.
People know you as Judge Edwards. Some call you Lawyer Edwards. you're a soccer dad to me. And tell me about the beautiful game. I hear you always talk about this game that's so beautiful. Tell me about this soccer that you enjoy so much, because I hear you talk about your boys. I know you're a lawyer. I mean, you're a judge. But I hear you talk about the game of soccer, and you just light up like it's the greatest thing ever. Tell me why it's that great.
It is. If I were to hit the lottery, Judge Edwards might retire, because I got some plans of things I'd like to do with youth soccer. But let's be clear. I played not a single second of soccer in my life. No, so I'm a true kind of a backseat driver soccer fan. I've learned what I know about it from just watching my boys play. But I really do enjoy the game. A couple things that I love about it is, and this is the case with a lot of sports, but it really resonates with soccer, is one person cannot do it in soccer. When particularly as kids get older, you can take a team that can have the 3 best players on the field. They can be far and away the 3 best. And if the other 8 folks around them aren't holding up their end of the bargain, they will get destroyed by a team of 11 solid players, because that team of 11 solid players is a team. And a team, you play sports, a team really, when it gets down to it, is only as strong as its weakest link. Right. So soccer really, really does, it is a sport that is all about the weakest link, not about the strongest link. And it really teaches teamwork. It really teaches responsibility, because you don't want to be that weak link. If you're that weak link, then your team will suffer. So it teaches those lessons. And, another thing that I've enjoyed about soccer, and why I really am passionate about seeing it exposed to more and more people, particularly young black folk here in Louisville, is soccer is a game that should not be expensive. You need a flat surface and a ball, and that's it. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need fancy locales. You don't need an indoor facility. Flat surface and a ball, and some time and some energy and some kids, and they can play soccer. You don't have to be super tall. You don't have to be super fast. You don't have to be super strong. It is really a sport that a lot of people can do. It's just a matter of the willingness, the work ethic, and the desire and opportunity to play it. So, big fan of the beautiful game, man.
Neither party, or the outcome has been the same for people who are poor, regardless of the party. But I think worse than that, putting aside, which is easy to do because it's always done, the issue of poverty. Say that everybody was a middle-class person in the United States. Let's say that everybody going into this pandemic had a job and had the ability to pay for some level of child care for their children and things like that. The parties, both of them, have failed the United States so badly to this point that we were probably we were definitely among, and we may have been the worst developed nation on the entire planet prepared to deal with this pandemic. We had to send people back to work because there was no guaranteed basic income.
Right.
We had to send people back to work because we tie insurance, health insurance, to people's jobs. No one had any savings because of the wealth gap. And so as a result of all of those things, the only people, the perfect metaphor of that, of course, was the President of the United States getting socialized medical care at Walter Reed Hospital.
Right.
And leaving the hospital in 3 days. And then coming back out and campaigning to people who are agreeing with him that guaranteed basic income, which he has, because he got that from his father.
It's no good because it's socialism.
Yeah, that's socialism. That healthcare is socialism.
Yeah.
That daycare is socialism.
Or communism.
That school is socialism or communism.
Yeah.
So because the Democrats have been campaigning to be elected, and in Kentucky, at the federal level, have been campaigning merely to be one small step to the left of the Republican Party.
They're Republican light.
We have nothing.
Yeah.
We have nothing. And now we're in a pandemic where it's not irrational. I don't agree with the decisions. But looking at it, taking a step back, it's not irrational for the governor of a state in the United States of America to order everybody back to work in the middle of a pandemic, knowing that this many people will get sick and that this many people will die. Because if you're putting aside morals, and you're putting aside caring, and you're putting aside what I believe to be the fundamental role of government, that's to care for those who...
Then that stuff makes absolute sense.
I know that you're very well, a lot of people look at you and you have a lot of distinction. And a lot of people say a lot of great things about you. I will tell you that. And I'm so happy to have you. I'm so happy to have you as a friend as well. What can we do to get the word out about COVID, about colon cancer for people of color? What can I do through this show, whatever? What can we do just to get the word out so that you don't have to be the flag carrier the whole time by yourself?
I'm not. You're doing the show. What do we do? People, as they say, people say, do as I say, not necessarily as I do. But it's what you do that people pay the most attention to. So you're a guy that's out there. People see you, no matter whether you want to be seen or not. People see what you're doing. And if you're wearing the mask, you're maintaining the social distancing.
Because we're social distance right now.
Right now we are, yeah. I thought it was because you thought I hadn't bathed or anything, or because of my job. You think he must be carrying some poo around with him. But no, but that's the thing, man. People need to see that people are doing this. Not because you get people of privilege. Let's face it, Judge, you're a privileged man. You're not going to be treated the same way. Well, initially you may be, once they find out who you are. But you can do something. You say, well, I'm the judge, therefore I don't have to do quite like you normal people do. But you do. And so everyone sees that. So there's the example. This is how we are to conduct ourselves in a civilized society, in a society where each one of us is responsible for somebody else. So if you're wearing the mask, I got to ask, well, heck, if he's wearing it, how come I'm not wearing it? Mm-hmm. If he's maintaining distancing, why can't I get? Number two, your family sees what you eat, and they see what you do. Your friends say, hey, man, it's good. But you're 45 now. You're 46. What did your colonoscopy show? Because I know you went and had one done. Mm-hmm. Oh, you didn't have it? Well, let's get you. You need to call somebody. Yeah. That is the way we do it. That one-to-one-to-one. And hopefully that person will, as they used to say, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Let's spread that out. We can spread things through Facebook, these rumors about people, and it just goes exponentially. Same thing. Let's just put it out there. If you're 45, you haven't had your colorectal cancer screening, there's no good reason not to do it. So let's all make sure we get it done.
Since the epidemic and the pandemic has really hit this part of the country, can you talk to us about what being in your position has done for you in the university, and what should we expect going forward with this pandemic in our midst?
Well, then that's the thing is we don't see the end, right? I mean, we can see we're in the process. I can't even tell you if we're in the middle of it. And that's what I've told our coaches and student athletes that, when some say, well, I might want to take this year off a red shirt, I'll just come back next year. I don't know what next year is. I can't guarantee them we're going to be free and clear next year. We might be in the same mess. I'm hopeful we're not. I think there's progress there, but it makes you reflect on, obviously you hear the term essential. What's essential to your department? What's essential to the student athlete? And it's a reminder that we're here for the student athlete experience. So when you start thinking about where you spend money and where you do things, if it's not wrapped around that student athlete experience, we got to reconsider it. Right. And so we've canceled a lot of professional development things. We've certainly taken the kickoff luncheons and tip-off lunches, made those virtual to save money. There's been a number of things we've had to do to just focus on how we can keep them healthy and get them into competition.
I was going to say, obviously, it has affected your bottom line. How has it affected everything for you?
Yeah, well, we've had to make some tough decisions for sure. Mm-hmm. Right away, we were projecting to go in with a budget of an operating budget of $109 million, and all of a sudden we're looking at 95, and I can see the 95 eroding as we speak. Mm-hmm. So we made some decisions. We cut about $15 million out of our budget to get there. We have less staff. We've had to furlough some staff that'll be going forward for an undetermined amount of time. We've had to cut a lot of discretionary spend in a variety of areas to be prepared. And I think one of the things we didn't expect to save on was recruiting. because the NCAA's extended the dead period. There's no recruiting going on with any travel. So each month that clicks by, there's a fair amount of savings in our recruiting budget that are going to help us, and we're going to need it because for all the additional testing and all the different additional costs related to COVID, we're going to need every dollar we can, and there'll still be more that we're going to have to look at.
Both you and I are former basketball coaches. Love athletics, love kids, love coaching kids. I know that there are athletes that are currently participating in sports during the fall, and that there's a question whether they need to be playing or not. What's going to go into the decision as to whether they will continue playing for the rest of the fall?
Yeah, so we made this decision, and it's the charge of my Board of Education. So I've got 7 bosses, Board of Education, and you know, they're elected by their constituents, and they give me guidance on, you know, what they expect to happen. Not often am they aligned all 7 together. This may be one of the issues where I've seen them all aligned, all 7 of them, very concerned about safety and health of students and staff. I want to say that, students and staff. And so athletics was a very difficult call for us. Originally, when we were going to play or not play. I was hoping we would have some state unity in this, but unfortunately it was every district for themselves. Right. And so that made it very challenging. It made it very challenging in the fact that we were saying kids can't come to school, but they can play athletics. How were we going to balance that out? And I understand some people's frustration with that. But we also know that athletics is more of a voluntary option. We know that it supports kids, and we felt we could do it safely, especially outside. And so we went ahead and allowed that to happen. You know, we've had a good number of positive cases in our athletics programs of COVID-19, and we've had to shut them down. But we were very clear from the beginning that if cases rise enough, we might, as a district, have to temporarily shut it down. And so, you know, it's at a difficult time right now because we are in the postseason for many KHSAA tournaments, and there is no delaying those. Right. You either participate or you don't. And so we're going to make that decision tomorrow. We're looking at possibly differentiating those that are in postseason to allow them to finish up because of the KHSAA, and then also, you know, the others could temporarily pause for a week, hope the numbers go down, and then they could make up games. So those are the things we're weighing right now. We'll make a decision on that very shortly based on data. But there's no doubt it's difficult. I want to say this. We're trying to do everything we possibly can to help and support kids in the middle of a pandemic. And unfortunately, there's just no easy answers to anything.
I understand that.